Perfect. How's it going, guys? Thanks for joining our live stream. We're happy to have everybody here tonight. Thanks for watching. Um, First and foremost, I think typically what we'll do is we'll just go around in a circle, kind of introduce ourselves, um, kind of talk about what our channel talks about, um, kind of our specifics, our niches, and the things that we talk about most on our channel. I think Dennis, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so my name's Dennis. I'm of course here on YouTube just like everybody else, and I love talking about ways to make money, save money, and invest money to help build people's wealth. Bryce and I met actually a couple months ago at a conference, and it was really awesome to be able to meet up and obviously be here and chat about personal finance because oddly enough we talk about it on a weekly basis, but I think all of us here can talk about personal finance on a daily basis as well too. So pretty much this live stream is just our mastermind group, just kind of in real life for everybody to kind of watch us talk. Ellie?
Hey guys, I'm Kelly with Freedom in a Budget, and my channel is just all the personal finance, growing your income, kicking debt to the curb, just thinking of creative ways to cut your spending without having it be limiting, and just breaking the stigma that budgets are constricting, because they're not. They give you freedom. And I also met Bryce this past summer, which was so awesome just to get to hang out with him at the Smithsonian after hours, which was pretty cool.
That was really cool.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, John, you're up.
What's up, everybody? I'm John Scholler with John Scholler on YouTube, the Frugal Investor on Instagram. I also love personal finance. That's how I ran into these guys. And now we do a mastermind every Monday where we get to hang out for an hour or two and just talk about personal finance and grow on our YouTube. And that's also how I met Bryce. I'm actually primarily a real estate investor, though. So my channel has kind of shifted away from just personal finance into more real estate and personal finance, but people seem to like the real estate more, so I try to put out more of that content.
Yeah, you and Bryce are both big into the real estate game too, so it's pretty awesome to have two people in the room that love talking about real estate all the time.
Right.
Gets us
I feel
excited.
like most of the time I probably dominate the conversation with real estate, so you have to tell me to shut up, but it is what it is.
Nice. Well, so here in the chat we have Brad from the Fin Mindset. What's up, Brad? Hope you're doing well. Haven't chatted with you in a long time. Then we also have Pennies into Pearl here in the chat as well. So if you're watching now, a couple little things. One, you can definitely say hi in the chat to all of us, and then if you have any questions, whether it's to one person or all of us, let us know in the chat there, so we can all have some conversations going back and forth.
I think until we really get started, there's a story that I posted on my Instagram this morning. There was a tweet from Ramit Sethi. I think that's probably a good way to start this off, and I'm curious to hear everybody's insights before we start getting questions from people in the chat. But if you hadn't seen what I posted, it's essentially Ramit talking about $3 coffees, and he's saying people try to save money on $3 coffees, but they don't worry about saving money on investment fees, asset allocation, negotiating your salaries, mortgage interest, student loan interest, all these other things. So he essentially says, stop asking the $3 questions and start asking the $30,000 questions. So I'm curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are on all that, and then I'm sure the conversation will just mold and shift.
Yeah, no, that was an interesting tweet. First off, we also got Bronson in the chat. How's it going, Bronson? Thanks so much for joining us. We see Alex that just joined in. We got JJ Buckner, who might hopefully join us later down the road on this live stream, but he is giving his son a bath right now too. That'll be awesome to have him join us. I think
JJ's just being a creeper and watching.
No, you kidding? He loves to join us. He loves to go into tents. People were here in our last live stream. So that tweet is an interesting one. I was actually talking to somebody just the other day. So I go to what they call a FinCon local meetup, which is a bunch of people in the financial community here in Phoenix, Arizona. And one of the things we were talking about is how I've kind of shifted my mindset of only trying to figure out ways to save money in the short term in small doses versus trying to save more in the long term. And I've done both, but I think my mindset is now like, how can I save bigger? Because cutting my budget in groceries by $3 is not going to save me a whole lot in the 12 months in 1 year, versus if I found a way to save $500 in the year based off of something I can do in one day in a couple hours, that's more advantageous for me. So I definitely agree with that statement of like looking at ways to save money or make more money versus having to try to just save a penny, which is not bad, but I think it's more advantageous to go the other route now.
Agreed. Kelly, you're next.
I loved this tweet. I saw it as well. And one of the things that came to mind is something that I struggled with a lot in the beginning of like, people were asking me about meal delivery services and, those types of things that cost more money and than just typical grocery shopping and meal prepping. And at first I was very against them. I was like, no, you are wasting so much money if you just bought your own groceries and meal prepped and figured out on Pinterest the recipes, like you would be saving ridiculous amounts of money. But then I realized, okay, but we can't compare my journey to other people. And think about how much you're saving still from eating out 5 days a week. Say you picked up takeout on your way home every single night and it was $40 for your family. You're still saving so much money throughout. So yes, those things may be costing a little bit more, but in the long run, it could be saving you. And then also, like Dennis mentioned, what about increasing your income? Like, yeah, Starbucks is in our budget, and we spend a lot of money on Starbucks every month, mostly from Jamie. But that's something that's important to him, and that's something that
Blame it on your husband, I see.
By the way, as a Starbucks stockholder, I do appreciate that.
True. And yeah, so we're just giving back to ourselves. And so I'm more on, well, what can we do to increase our income right now? What can we do to offset that and then grow exponentially? Like, yeah, we may be able to save $5, but if we don't save that $5, but we grow our income by 10 grand this month, then that's a lot more than $5. And I have a cat taking over. I'm sorry.
We can go over to John. What are your thoughts?
So I get both sides of this argument, the coffee, the saving on the coffee and just buy the coffee and save elsewhere. But for me, it's never about the coffee. It's never about the extra pair of shoes. It's never about the little bit of a nicer car. To me, it's about developing the mindset and the self-discipline. Mm-hmm. So when you develop that self-discipline to say no to the coffee and you practice that, then you'll also say no to going out to eat 5 times a week. You'll learn how to say no to the extra bills, the subscriptions, the Netflix and the Disney and all that. You'll eventually learn that. I'm not saying you can't have these things, but no matter who you are, if you've made it somewhere in life, you've made sacrifices along the way. And yes, the bigger sacrifices may have counted more, but you've only learned how to self-discipline and make those bigger sacrifices from making the smaller ones. And so that's where it is for me. I'm not telling you can never have a cup of coffee or never go out to eat. I'm saying that you need to develop a self-discipline to say no to it sometimes, because where most people are at, they can never say no, right? Or they say yes 90% of the time and only 10. And it really needs to be flopped for a little while when you're starting out. Look, there's 2 ways to get more money: save more or make more. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, many of us have a ceiling on how much more we can make. You can walk into your job tomorrow and ask for a $10,000 raise, and I bet maybe 2% of you listening to this will get that, if that. Yeah. But you can always control what you save. You can never really control over time. You can control your income with experience, but it's much harder to get to $200,000 in income than it is to learn how to save 40% of your income.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about that? So with like earning an income, I was always thinking about this. So during my career working for a regular 9-to-5 job, because now I work full time on my own, it was something along the lines of like 2 to 5% increase every single year on my income, depending on my performance. And if you just do any basic math, you know that 2 to 5% is gonna barely keep up with inflation and then some. And then if you're trying to increase your lifestyle, that is not a lot. But I've learned that doing your own business and working for yourself, whether it's a side hustle or your full-time career that you're trying to build for yourself, you can be making so much more year over year than you can ever possibly do working for somebody else. Like Kelly, calling you out here in a good way, she was talking about how, over the last couple of years, she's been doubling her income. Now, that's not possible for 99% of people in a regular 9-to-5 job. You're not going to see that happen often. But with somebody like her doing her own side hustle, like she's increasing her income substantially because she's putting the time and effort and work into it. where can't get that kind of.
I think a lot of people underestimate, they think, how do I put this right? They underestimate their value, and they don't realize that you get paid on your value and not by the hour. And that's a very difficult mental switch that you have to make. And I don't think I even really made that switch myself until I did my first house flip. We flipped this house, we sold it, and when we sold it, we made 20 grand, but I didn't do $20,000 worth of work.
Yeah.
And so, John, I'm sure you realize this with all the house flips that you guys do, but you're paid on your value. And so, what if you do want that $3 or $4 coffee every day? Yeah, people just don't understand that they really can offer $400 a month more in value. And then that offsets the price of the coffee. So I think people just kind of limit themselves naturally and thinking, I can't do this because I don't have anything to offer. But people have a lot more to offer than they give themselves credit for.
I also don't.
Go ahead, John.
I also don't think people seem to understand, or at least know about compound interest, but they can't seem to do the math on compounded expenses. So it's never just the coffee. Like, I've never met anybody that isn't okay financially because they bought just coffee. It's because they buy the other stuff. They buy everything else too. So it's not just the coffee. I mean, there's a book written on that. I haven't read it yet, but it talks about the $3 coffee or something.
The latte
like
factor.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
But it's never just the coffee. It's that you don't have the self-discipline to say no to all the other things as well. So you can make a sacrifice somewhere. If you cut off your cable, if you don't drink coffee and you cut off your cable and you switch to coffee and you only spend 30 on your coffee and 80 on your cable, now you get your coffee and get to drink it too, essentially, right? So you're saving money and you got your coffee, but you had to make a sacrifice somewhere, or increase your income, increase your value, like Bryce is saying.
Yeah. Now, Adam has a really great question, but before we get to it, because we're talking about coffee, Mary from Penny's Not Perfection says that you're all really making me want a coffee while I'm trying out a no-spend month, which brings up a good question of, do you guys believe in no-spend months, or do you think it's not as effective as what somebody's trying to accomplish?
Before we get into that, I do want to add a point to the last thing. Is I was talking to one of my coworkers about how her spouse is a AC repair guy, and people complain like, that took you 30 minutes. Why are you charging me $300 in labor? He's like, I'm not charging you $300 for 30 minutes. I'm charging you $300 because the years that it took me to get this experience. You want to install it yourself for, it's going to take you a lot more, and you may electrocute yourself. You may screw it up. You may cause more damage. You're paying me for your experience. And when we're getting to that level of, growing our income in different side hustles and growing businesses, we're gaining that experience that we can then charge for that versus just time for money, which is what we're doing at our jobs. I feel like my day job, I come in, punch out, and it's just time for dollars.
So Dennis, to go back to your question, to answer Penny's Not Perfection's question, I and not, I'm not trying to put you down or anything. I've never done a no save month. The most I've ever done is a
no spend month. No spend month.
Or a no spend month. I've only done a no spend week. The reason for that is because I kind of feel like it's dieting. When you deprive yourself for so long, you just go crazy and you're like, I don't care. I'm gonna eat the chocolate cake and the bacon, and I'm gonna drink a gallon of chocolate milk with it.
Chocolate with bacon? What are you eating?
It's separate.
Definitely not vegan.
So no, I've done a no spend week, and I think that's mostly beneficial because it's a long enough period of time to make you kind of feel the pain, but enough that you're not like starving yourself financially, but it also gives you enough like insight to be able to change little things here and there. Whereas if it were a whole month, I don't know that I would really get the whole effect.
Brad. Yeah, Brad, somebody did say the V word. Apparently, so Bryce is a little newer to our live streams. So vegan is a V word that usually doesn't get said on the live streams.
The V word.
And John broke that rule because he's a little new to these live streams as well. But
That's someone.
I wasn't
Brad-
advocating. I was just stating the fact.
Brad's there with his like fist pump in the air, probably
Right.
getting all
Getting it
excited.
on.
It's back. The word is back. I have a really different opinion on no spend months or days or whatever. I'm not a fan of them personally. I've never really done them. The only time I've ever like done no spends was just when I was trying to figure out if I was making sure that all of my bills were going through properly and then making sure that I had the right money in the account. But I don't know. For me, no spends are really interesting because I don't for me, I think it's more along the lines of like I need to be paying attention to what I'm getting anyways. And I feel like for a lot of people, if they do even more than a week, I would say like 2 weeks to a month or whatever, it can really hurt them. And then afterwards, they end up going back into their spending habits versus just being more cautious, like John was saying, being more intentional with how you're managing your money and what you're buying. Because if you're doing that already, you shouldn't have to worry about it. It's like if you want to like frame it around like dieting, it's like trying to eat once a day for a week versus, well, why don't we just do smaller meals each for each meal, and then that way we're kind of being a little bit more consistent across the board and then getting that habit to go on past just that one week. So for me, I would just be like, no, I need to pay more attention to what I'm spending on. Like once in a while, my wife and I will actually spend a little bit more on eating out than what we budget for. But if that happens, all I do is like I look at our stuff and I'm like, oh wow, there's Taco Bell, In-N-Out Burger, and like all these other places, and I'm like, okay, well, I just tell my wife like, hey, we've been spending a lot of eating out funds, let's kind of slow down, and then we just slow down on that because we paid attention to it, versus like saying, okay, we're not going to go eating out at all for like 2 weeks because it's not really feasible if something happens, if we get busy, whatever the case may be.
I think I like the perspective that it brings though. Like it really does show like, oh, I'm doing this daily, and those are the little things that add up. It's the every time you're in an airport you get a souvenir, or whatever it is. Like the constant little things really add up and make a huge difference. So again, I shouldn't say that I do it all the time, but I do like the clarity that it brings to know that I am buying too much than I should.
I think the no spend thing is it's almost, since we're like comparing it to diets, I think it is a personality thing. Look, if it works for you, I'm not going to knock it. If it works for you, go for it. But it's not anymore for me, because I guess I've been doing this for so long that no spend month is normal for me. A spend month would be weird for me. Like my wife and I probably average eating out 6 to 8 times a year, max. Like so, like we just don't. It's not something we do. So I think that if you went from heavy spending to just straight up a no spend month, then you are going to go out of control again later. I think you should taper off and then try a no spend month. But it's really going to be a personality thing. It could work for you, but I think for most it would be too restrictive, and they're going to go. I think you'll eventually say, well, I tried saving once and it didn't work for me. Well, that's not true. You went straight from spending a bunch of money to spending no money, and you hated it because you cut out everything you enjoyed. So maybe just taper it off and then try to work your way up to a no spend month. But I think a no spend month, even for me, would be too restrictive.
So I saw Ryan here in the chat as well. Hi Ryan, thanks for joining us here. Let's go back to Adam's question. So Adam asked a really awesome question. His channel is called Adam's Financial Freedom. So it sounds like he is doing some content there for personal finance. He says, how would you deal with a partner who isn't in the same mindset of saving, sacrificing, and investing? Now, this is an interesting question because so we have a mastermind group together, and Bryce and I were kind of talking a little bit about this, how we kind of had somewhat of a difficult time with our spouses on the idea of sacrificing to be able to build something for ourselves long term for business wise, which essentially helps us with our freedom with money and investing and all that stuff. So Bryce, if you want to kind of answer this question.
Yeah. So this it's kind of interesting. I think I'm lucky in the sense that my wife is already on board. Like she's actually more frugal than I ever was long before we got married. So I lucked out in that department. But what Dennis is referring to is sacrificing time. So sometimes like I'm working hours on this YouTube channel and she's kind of just out bored, I don't know, doing chores around the house or something, when really she would rather spend that time with me. And so I wouldn't say it's been a struggle in our marriage, but it's been a little tiny point of contention. Just like, I'm here right now, spend some time with me. And the way that I see it is I'm building something now so that for years in the future, we can spend that time. This is a big time investment right now, but if we don't have to work for the next 30, 40, 60 years, then that in my mind is worth it. But as far as like from a financial perspective, I think to answer your question, everybody is going to have different preferences. I really like to spend money on food and technology. My wife doesn't care about any of that. She likes the clothes and makeup and getting dressed up and things like that. And so I think everybody should have their splurge category. Everyone should have a section and a budgeted, allotted amount of money that they're allowed to spend. But really just comes down to talking it out and discussing what's important to the other person or both people in the relationship and seeing how you can allocate those funds accordingly.
So Bryce, you mentioned something, and I think this is kind of what I was trying to get at with mentioning the fact that there was a little bit of a hard time when it came to you sacrificing your time. It goes along the same lines where what you were doing to express your interest in wanting to build something for the future was that you were giving a vision of where you were trying to go. And I think that works the same with saving money or investing money or sacrificing for anything else, is that you have to give your partner a vision of what you're trying to accomplish for your team, right? Because if you are just saying, hey, we need to save money because we need an emergency fund, that doesn't really give them a great example. But it's like, hey, listen, if something happens to our roof, I would like to make sure that we have money set aside. Or, hey, I want to be putting the max our Roth contributions this year because when we hit retirement, I want us to be able to go to the beach and just have mimosas on the beach all day every day. And you're giving them these images and these visions of what your goal is and why you're trying to make these sacrifices.
Show them the light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly. So I think you and I have done that when it came to our business aspect, and I think that can correlate really well with trying to save money or invest money. Is give that partner just the idea of what it is, and especially if they have certain interests. So like my wife loves wine. Like she loves to drink wine all the time. So I was like, hey, listen, right now we're buying like the $2 to $4 bottles of wine. And, once we have money coming in, once we are able to spend more, have more freedom, like you can buy whatever wine you want. And then that way you don't have to worry about it. And so that gave her the opportunity to say, okay, fine, I'll sacrifice now, have the cheaper wines. And then down the road, I will be able to have the wines that I would prefer, knowing that because I sacrificed, I get this reward.
Exactly. Kelly, what's your perspective on this with you and Jamie?
This is a big struggle for us. And, we've been married for 2 years now, and, it's gotten easier, but it's still something that we talk about all the time and go back and forth because he's definitely a spender. He's at the mindset of we make really good money. He makes more money than he ever has in his life, times a lot. And a lot of his friends just live that frat boy lifestyle and aren't married, and they just go out and party, or they go out and buy, fancy new stuff and whatever. And then they're always making fun of, is that in the budget? Is that in the budget? And so it's hard. I definitely talk with him about goals and, talk about his Tesla that we're going to get, and, the vacations that we want to go on, and different things, and just kind of dream with him when he's getting that way. And I have to be like, because he travels a lot for work too, which he does get per diem, but a lot of times he goes way over on per diem just because the places that they go, like Vegas, which is ridiculously expensive. I'm like, do you even look at the prices when you're going to the menu, or do you just like, and he's like, no, I don't look at prices, I'll be honest. But
I don't know if I would ever be able to personally like not look at prices on menus.
Same.
Oh yeah, even when other people are paying, I still have to look at prices. Yeah.
I don't know if I don't care that much if somebody else is
No?
paying. Filet mignon, T-bone steak, like
double order of filet mignon, please.
right.
I don't know, I couldn't. But it's definitely, it will go up and down. But then like when we have those talks of like, okay, or let's cut back here, but we can still spend here, then that kind of helps balance it out for him.
What about speak more to like your side hustle? Because I mean we all do YouTube obviously, and so I know that your time commitment into YouTube is a lot too. How does Jamie feel about that? I really don't know a whole lot about Jamie. Does he have any side hustles or anything like that?
No, just he does a little bit of like graphic design, and he did more before, but now his job just takes up so much time. because he travels a lot for it. And then when he is home, I'm sitting here at my desk and he's sitting there at his desk. Because he has to, he's a lighting designer, so he has to plan everything out in CAD. So he has to like physically build the stage in CAD and put all the little chairs in there and all the lights and everything. And then when he goes to the show, then he has to build it in real life and run it through like the media servers and the consoles and stuff. But so he has to take work home a lot. So we'll just be sitting here. But things like date nights, they don't happen very often. Like one of our goals for 2020 is to have a monthly date night because it had been like 6 months since last time we had one. So just different things like that of trying to balance time and side hustle.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
John, I'm curious to hear your perspective on this too. How does Rihanna handle things?
So I am very fortunate in my relationship. Honestly, I'm fortunate for finding Rihanna, but I made sure we had our talks in the very beginning. It wasn't easy for us. I mean, our first 3 years, a lot of relationships are hard at the time. Our first 3 years, we were all over the place, mostly because of me, and I was living the frat boy life and whatever. But like financially,
You and
we
John hang out together.
right. But financially, like for me, financials and kids are almost the same in a relationship. Like it's almost that important. If you're asking me, all right, like somebody could argue with that with me, and that's fine. But I think that's almost just as important because if not, somebody's going to sacrifice somewhere on what they truly want. And I think somebody's going to end up less happy in the relationship. Somebody really, really, really wants kids, and the other one doesn't want kids at all. That's going to, in my opinion, and from what we see statistically, that's going to be a tough relationship. So, same thing financially. If you want to retire at 50, and they're like, I don't care when I retire, I'll work till I drop dead, that's going to clash at some point. It might not be right up at the beginning, but as you get closer to that age of when you actually want to retire, and one of you can't because the other one's spending too much, or you can't do what you want to do because the other one's saving too much, you've got to be I think that you got to be on the same page relatively. You don't have to have the exact same goals. I'm not asking, you don't have to be a mirrored image, but it has to be within the realm of each other to get there at a certain time. If somebody's at 60 and someone's at 58 and a half, I think you'll be okay. But if someone's like, I don't care if I retire till 80 and you want to be out at 50, you got to work someone's got to work another 30 years, or someone has to save another 30 years that they don't want to. So I think it's just as important as a kids when that talk comes up in the beginning of your relationship. I'm not saying it's impossible for it to work, but somebody would have to be very passive and are malleable in what they ultimately want. So for Rihanna and I, we've been together for 12 years now, married going on 7. And financially, I mean, we're spot on with the same goals. We both want the same thing. We both want passive income. We both want to choose if we work or if we don't work. And we want to be able to give back a lot. And so that's a goal for both of us to do sooner than later. And just fortunate in that area for both of us.
So I saw that we have Q makes it happen here in the chat.
Yeah.
What is up, Q? Thanks for joining. I think you come to like almost every single live stream for the group,
Yeah,
which is good to us. And then I see Christopher says, I think it goes back to the end goal and the vision mentioned earlier. Like, yeah, I definitely believe that. I don't think everybody has to have literally the exact same goal here, like matching verbatim as far as that goes. But I think having a consensus between each other. I know like my wife and I don't have exact end goals in mind per se, but I think now we're at a position where we understand where each person wants to go and how we can get there. And it's really awesome because it makes things a lot easier.
That's great.
I think you at least need to be a good communicators. So like if you are the spender or you are the saver, and you at least need to be on the same page of like, hey, I'm going to go buy a car today. Like that needs to probably be discussed. Or hey, or if you're the saver, hey, I went and opened a Roth and dumped $11,000 in there, and we can't touch it till we're 59 and a half. Like both of those conversations need to happen no matter what side of the spectrum you're on. But I think communication in relationships probably number one. Excuse me, it's probably number one, because the rest of it is just falls in line after that.
Yeah, I've not putting names, but I have a friend who ended up buying a car. Obviously, got a huge loan for it for many, many years without telling their significant other, and it was They ended up like their significant other was fine with it, which blew my mind. But like they did not know whatsoever. Like I'm pretty sure that's something you should be talking about, together as a couple.
That's a personality thing, right? One of them is very passive.
Yeah.
But if you're both A type A's and one goes and does that, good luck.
Yeah, Adam there says that that's how his parents split up. She didn't tell him about the car. Like, holy smokes! I mean, that can make a big difference. Right? I see Mary asked earlier. She says, "What's the best decision you made for your finances in the last year?"
Can I go first?
No, you have to go last.
So two things actually. So the first one I'll say is buy real estate, because that's what I do and I dominate the conversation with real estate. But two, going along with that, my wife and I made a goal, and John, you touched on this earlier, is about giving back. Everybody has this this idea that, oh, I'll give when I'm wealthy, but you never ever get to that point. You're never wealthy enough to be able to give. And so my wife and I made this decision that every single time we purchase a new property, we're going to donate $1,000 at least to somebody in need. And the reasoning behind that is because if we are wealthy enough to purchase a rental property, we can probably find $1,000 extra in our budget.
Sure.
And so it can be completely like anonymous, or it can be something, someone that we know, and it's not necessarily a surprise. So for example, my mother-in-law, we just bought her a new couch. Her couch was 25 years old, and she's just been talking about this couch for so long. So one day we went to the store, bought a couch, went into the house, swapped it out, and then just left, and she didn't even know about it.
Mr. Vista.
So exactly, yeah. So that's the biggest thing that's changed to our finances, I think, is buy real estate. But we made a goal. We want to give back every step along the way, and not just at the very end, because there's always something.
No, I like that. That is really, really cool. My wife wants to do. We're not at that point yet, because this you actually do need more. She wants to have a scholarship fund where she pays for generally a female with an ethnicity, usually anywhere in like the Spanish region or whatnot, to be able to go to college paid for. So that obviously we need to build up a little bit more, but that's one of her main goals, and I think it's really cool. That's awesome. Then for me, I'm kind of looking at the idea of helping other people who are in their journey of paying off debt, or just getting started with, like, just at the end part of their getting out of debt journey, and like helping them in some way, whether it's like donating like $1,000, like you're saying, or a couple $100, because doing it to somebody who's just on the beginning path makes it a little tough, because they're not there yet in the cycle of understanding, getting all the way through and paying everything off. But for somebody who's like right at the end, usually that can take the longest, because it's usually their biggest debt, like their student loans or something like that. And doing something like that would be super cool. Like, that's inspiring me to say, like, I need to start doing that sooner rather than like.
So you're gonna like open a fund for like Scott's Tots?
Maybe. That'd be cool.
Office? Anybody? No? Okay, never mind.
Well, I've seen The Office, but I don't remember that.
Wow. Season 3, episode 8. It's fine. I'm not.
You're such a liar. Oh, that's not the episode.
Oh man.
I don't know if that's right.
Or what? Now, were you bringing up The Office because I used that GIF in the community tab with Jim?
No. Well, I mean, yeah, that could be it, I guess. But...
Totally. I was debating between either The Office or New Girl gift to put up excitement.
That's good. That's really.
But yeah,
good.
no, that's awesome. Like, I'm super excited about that. But yeah, that kind of gets me encouraged to start figuring things out like that, because now my wife and I are in a position where we're starting to do really well with our incomes based off of our businesses growing. So doing something like that sooner rather than later kind of makes a lot more sense. I think you kind of hit it on there, where if you keep waiting, it doesn't feel like it's ever going to get there, because there's always something new that you have to add to your growing portfolio when it comes to earning more money, versus just saying, I'm going to just start putting a little bit towards, helping others. I don't remember that reference. My wife watches The Office like a million times. It's a little.
That's how I am with Friends.
JJ says, I have a natty light fund you can all start adding to, tax write-off, and very much appreciate it.
Yeah,
None of us make enough money.
Yeah, not for the cost of those natty lights, man. Although they do have like the flavored natty lights. I don't know if you ever tried those, JJ, but I'm actually really intrigued to try them because I don't normally drink regular.
He's gonna pick on you for that.
I don't care. I drink whatever I want to drink. I
That's
don't
how I
drink beer,
feel.
but I'll drink mixed drinks, and that's what I normally do.
I can't walk like past a cooler without seeing Natty Light and thinking of JJ.
Every time I go to Costco, I see the huge like pallets of them, and I want to.
I'll send him a picture real quick. Yeah.
So I see that Hot Dog Supernova had a question. We're gonna be having to take a minute break here in just a moment. So let's have that question be answered after that little break there, because I think that'll give us a lot more freedom.
So we'll for sure answer that.
Yeah, because I don't want to get started with the question and then have to like pause for a second. So in case any of you guys don't know, so we're using Zoom, and none of us have like the premiere version of Zoom. So we get like 40 minutes, and so what we're gonna do is take like a minute or two break. We're gonna log off, log back in, and then like the live stream doesn't go anywhere. It's gonna stay here, and then we'll just get right back in and start answering questions. So if you guys have questions, you can leave them in the chat, because it takes a minute or two by the time we talk about it for you guys to hear it and type it in. So you guys can start asking us more questions, because so far everyone's been asking some pretty awesome questions.
Great questions.
And I see, is that Charles is here in the chat as well. So that's awesome that we're having a lot of people commenting and chatting with us.
Okay, so nobody leave. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
Yeah, so give us just a few moments and we will be... Cool. So we are back now. The order looks a little different. So if you guys were watching us for a second, it might be different. I got yelled at earlier because I apparently skipped Kelly and John on answering the question of what they did in the last year, which I didn't even technically answer either. All I said was whatever Bryce was saying, I actually think it's really cool. So I didn't even answer it.
You gave your wife's response and your scholarship.
Well, no, those are things that we want to do. I didn't start those yet, so I'm just saying. I'm saying what
the smackdown.
Yeah, I'm getting. I didn't even answer it myself, so that's what I'm getting at.
All right, then start us off.
No, I'm not gonna answer that because I got yelled at for it. So you guys got to miss that. I see Mrs. S here in the chat as well. So Kelly, go ahead and answer. What is the best thing you did financially in the
last year? This was typically, well, we bought a house. That was a big one. That was a huge financial. But other than that, our financial didn't change very much this year. We were already debt free. We already, we're kind of in the like budgeting as a married couple. But like the theme is in the room right now is of giving. And we have given this whole entire journey, but this year we really upped it a lot. And I think we gave like 20% of our total income.
Wow.
One of the coolest things that we did was bought Christmas gifts for a family that was going through the mom just had a double mastectomy and going through cancer treatments, and is only 30 years old, which is crazy because she's my age and has 2 kids and a husband. I just can't imagine going through that. So it was so cool to be able to shop for her and spoil their family and everything, and just think of those like outside, like spontaneous giving things, and doing like double the bill challenges for waiters and waitresses. We supported like people going through immigration stuff. We supported missionaries, and we sponsor someone in El Salvador. We want to sponsor more kids and stuff. So just really increasing that giving is just so much. Like, I always knew that it was fun, but it's a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be, which you never think giving away your money is going to be fun, but it can be. I mean, it is. And that's mine. John, you're up.
Well, we're opposite. Rhiannon and I don't give back at all. We don't help anybody.
Okay.
All right, so next question.
But some things we also like to give, as many of you know. But some things we did financially. Two things was we. So look, I'm part owner in a flipping company where we flipped over 100 homes, and we have a bunch of rental properties and stuff like that. But Rhiannon and I didn't have any of our own personal properties in our own name, and so we finally, in the last week, we purchased our own fourplex. So that was a huge financial thing for us, right? To have our own personal rental property to manage and to be on our own names. And we're actually having a meeting tomorrow about refinancing that. But anyway, so we did that. And the other thing I did was did a lot of digging and research about a solo Roth 401k. I don't have time. I don't have all night to tell you guys about this, but if you have any companies where your sole company doesn't have any employees directly under that company, you can qualify for a solo 401k and do a Roth version of that. And as many of you know, the Roth contribution limits for most is $6,000 per individual. Well, I can contribute up to $56,000 into my Roth through this solo plan, through a couple conversions and a couple employer matches with my S Corp. But it is possible. So if you can only imagine, I know I love the Roth. I'm in love with the Roth. But what always limited is how much you could contribute to it, and also your income limits you. Well, I learned about the backdoor Roth, and now I learned about the solo Roth, and those don't have the limits. And so $56,000 a year into your Roth, imagine growing that with checkbook access, meaning you control it yourself. Imagine being able to grow that over the next 20 years in investments, and you never pay another dollar of tax, ever.
That's huge. Huge.
What? Sorry, that felt like it went away from the question though.
Well, you just said what I did
financially.
That's what I did financially.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. What you did financially.
Right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I just wanted to explain it because I love it. So my bad.
No. Are you kidding me? We talked about this too. Like,
Dennis, it's okay that John's a lot smarter than you, and you didn't.
Oh.
I mean,
realize that I'm the one controlling this live stream.
Oh, he's gonna kick us both out.
So if anybody here gets a live stream notification at like 3 a.m. from Bryce,
it's you.
Not me.
No, it'll be something. It won't be me though.
Oh no.
Just remember, I might play.
Okay. So I want to go back and answer Hot Dog Supernova. Does that work?
Yeah, no, that's definitely.
Your live stream.
That's fair. You do what I say. Okay. So Hot Dog Supernova, before the break, he asked what sort of legal action is most essential when first getting into real estate. So
that's a good one.
John, I'll give my 2 cents, and then if you want to jump in on this, because obviously we're the main two in real estate. My personal opinion, I think too many people, like especially with the big real estate seminars, people talk way too much about asset protection because it's kind of a scare tactic. Everyone is talking about get a Nevada LLC and then make sure that your LLC pays into this trust that then pays you. And there's like this weird triangle thing that this pays this and this pays this. And there's all this anonymity and supposedly it's supposed to protect you. And it's stupid. Don't do any of that. I think the two main things is get an LLC. And the second thing is get an umbrella policy for insurance. So obviously have insurance covering like a homeowner's policy on your rental property or a house flip or whatever it is. But an umbrella policy just covers what your LLC doesn't. So let's say I have rental property A, I put it in this LLC. What happens is if one of my tenants trips, falls, breaks their leg, and tries to sue me, they can only sue me for what's within the LLC. They can sue the business and get all the assets in that LLC. The problem though is if they know who I am, they can still come and sue me directly. They can sue Bryce Matheson for my personal property, my cars, things like that. And so an umbrella policy just covers all of my personal assets outside of the LLC. And an umbrella policy sounds really scary, but we've got $1 million of protection, and it's legitimately $20 a month. Like, it's less than the cost of a pizza. So don't go crazy. Like, I think it's a scare tactic. A lot of people say you need to get all this complicated structure. Don't do that. Get an umbrella policy, get an LLC. And sometimes don't even do that. Some people, like if you live in California, for example, LLCs are like $800 a year, and it's sometimes just not worth it. And the umbrella policy can cover you there. So that's my perspective, my 2 cents. John, I'm curious what you think.
Very, very similar. This is going to depend on the individual again and what you bought. Was your first investment property a 50-door apartment complex? Then you probably want to have a little bit more protection there. But most people buying their first property, one, it's going to be a cheaper property. Two, it's not going to have a ton of equity in it unless you bought it for cash, which again is usually not the case. Usually you leverage it somehow. So you're not going to have a lot there for people to come after anyway. And then the umbrella policy, like you said, is also a good thing to have. They're going to come after that next, but those get come after so little, it's not even funny. Look, your price of insurance tells you how much something gets attacked.
I was about to say that. Yeah,
That's a very good point.
I was about to
Very
say you're paying $20 for $1 million coverage. You're
the
obviously
likelihood is so slim.
Right. So if you're like if you're constantly drunk driving, your insurance is like $800-900 a month because you're a high risk liability. But if you've had no accidents for 10-15 years, your insurance is like $50 a month. And that's because it's all statistics. They see you as a number, and they see all the claims as a number. So the higher the insurance, the more likely it's going to be able to happen. Like I'm sure flood insurance, like in New Orleans, is probably high, or down that way. It's probably went through the roof. But yes, LLCs are okay to have. Get it if you want it, if it's cheap in your state. But don't, like you said, Bryce, don't try to figure out all these shell corporations and all these LLCs in different states, and you're going to pay more in lawyer fees than you're going to make in rental income. Like, chill out on that. Do it smart. Do it right. Get a nice insurance policy. Look, 9 times out of 10, I might want to say 9.9 times out of 10, they come after the insurance policy and not the asset itself, right? That they want a quick payout. They broke their leg in your apartment, 15 grand, and they go away 9 times out of 10. They usually don't like get a lawyer and do all this stuff to come after you and all your assets. So be protected. But I will say, depending on what you buy, if you buy a 50-door apartment complex as your first unit, get a legal team to put something together for you. You should have the margins in that apartment complex to spend a fair amount on the legal stuff to make sure you're protected, because now you're probably talking about at least $1 million asset.
I think to be fair, anybody that can afford to get a 50-door complex, I think would already have some mindset of like how to go about that.
Well, not all the time. Yes, you would. All right. So this is you and I have this bias because we come from a financial background.
Okay, but so don't tell me there's people out there buying 50-door complexes not knowing anything about it.
Well, people inherit money, right? People inherit money. They inherit complexes. They win the lottery. It's rare, but this happens. So when they get the money, they go, "Hey, I saw you just inherited $5 million. I got a good deal over here."
Yeah.
And they trust them. So they go and buy the good deal. And it might be a good deal, but they don't know anything about buying rentals. They don't know the first thing about it. They just heard good deal and I've got the money. And I trust this guy. Now all of a sudden they have $1.5 million out in liabilities and they have no protection. It happens. It's unfortunate, but it happens.
I think Q had a question as well, Bryce. I don't know if you saw that.
Right. Yeah. So Q asked, Bryce, what are your real estate portfolio goals? Do you have a certain amount of overall income you want through a set amount of properties? Yeah, actually. So for everyone who's not familiar with me, last year alone, so I've got a video actually that I posted 2 weeks ago, talks about how my wife and I bought 12 properties in 12 months. And if, again, hopefully this is motivational, but 1 year ago, this last month, my wife and I started our rental property business. So we've only been doing this for a year. We got 12 units. We actually sold off a duplex last month. So now we're down to 10. But Q, to answer your question, our goal, I don't have a set number of properties because you could make $500 from one door or you could make $100 from one door. So it kind of varies. But our total goal is we want to bring in $10,000 a month net by bringing in 10 grand, that'll allow myself and my wife to quit our jobs and just do real estate full time. Um, Based off the numbers that we have, based off the 10 units that we have right now, we're at about $3,000 a month. So we're bringing about $300 per month per unit. So going along with that trend, if that continues, we'll need about 32 to 35 doors to be able to get to that $10,000 goal. So we're about 1/3 of the way there. But seeing what we were able to do last year, our goal is to hit those additional 20 doors in 2020. So if that'll happen, who knows? But that's our goal. Shoot for the stars. We've got 10 units right now and 3 flips going. And the flips are what is helping us fund the additional rental properties.
Which I think is awesome. And I did actually watch your video about that. And I think it's fantastic and really thorough. Like the story that you tell of you guys getting started and going all the way through to having 12 property or 12 doors is fantastic. Like I think it really, it's a telltale it's a tale of you being able to go through and really get started. And there's a lot of work that's involved, and I think people like misconstrued that like it can be super easy. But I think if you put in the time and effort and dedication. So I know I was talking to you both. Actually, I was talking to both you, Bryce, and John, about obviously getting into more real estate. So I've mentioned that like my parents have real estate and I have my house, and eventually I want to get into real estate. And it's funny because there's so many little things that go on in real estate that I think for a lot of people it feels really overwhelming and scary. But knowing what I know about like the stock market and how a lot of people get afraid to get started with the stock market, a lot of it is just like just getting started, like just start figuring things out by doing a little bit of research here and there, and then start getting money saved up to be able to buy into properties. Is that kind of what you guys would agree with, is like just kind of get your foot in the door and start going for it versus like taking 5 years to learn every single thing about real estate investing?
I I've got an answer, but I'll let John speak to this first, and then I can follow up.
I kind of made up like an arbitrary rule because I got hung up on this. I researched I do this with everything, but I researched. I knew so much about real estate that I knew nothing because I didn't have any real estate. I could talk about it for days, but I didn't have any. And I swear, it's almost like the difference between going to school and then actually doing the profession.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing. Like the lingo, the vernacular, all like the terms, but you don't know how it works and how it comes together and how every single deal is different than the last one. Every single deal changes from the last one. You might see some replications here and there, but everyone's going to be set up different. You need to be leveraged different, talk down different. The person you're buying it from is different. It's always something, but 3 book minimum. If you've read your 3rd book, you need to be buying something. All right, that's my arbitrary rule. And then if you can't get around somebody that does, okay, somebody will use your money if you have money saved up. Now, if you don't have money saved up, it becomes a little bit more tricky, but you can offer your time. But get around somebody that is doing it, and they will motivate you. So that's what I do with my partners, Andrew and Steve. Now, would I have flipped 130 properties in the last 3 years on my own? No, maybe more like 10, or maybe, to be honest with myself, maybe like 0. Maybe I never did it if I didn't get with them. But now I have them. I'm a puller and they're a pusher, and we work well together. But I got around somebody that would do it, and I think that's where a lot of people lack, is to hang out with the same people not doing anything every day.
So here's an interesting thing. First and foremost, before we continue, if you guys are watching and haven't hit that like button, you guys are doing a complete disservice to Bryce. So make sure you guys hit that like button. So you were mentioning about getting around like-minded people, and that's super interesting because so I know both of you guys, and I have a mentor here in Phoenix that does real estate. He owns 37 properties. And then I have my best friend is actually a real estate agent. I have 4 people in my corner, and then my parents who do real estate as well too. So I actually have like 5-6 people in my corner that talk about real estate. And the funny thing is, it's like all of you guys love the idea of helping out with answering any questions. It never feels like a burden to just want to talk about it. It's like you guys have such passions for this stuff that, like, for me at least, I feel very confident because I got in the position to be able to talk to everybody. And a lot of that happened, obviously my parents are my parents, but like for all, like both of you guys and this other gentleman that lives in my town, it was only because I put myself out there with the intent of wanting to learn this kind of stuff. And it's really interesting and cool to see that like you guys love talking about it and actively just love helping other people get through their
I think the big fear comes from the fact that it's like a huge chunk of money. And uh, hopefully this isn't offensive to anybody, but when you're just starting out, like $5,000 seems like a ton of money. In the world of real estate, though, relatively speaking, like $5,000 is nothing. Like that is zero. Yeah, you can get into your first deal for $5,000, but you'll notice that as time goes on, that scales up significantly. I mean, especially when you're buying $1 million properties, $5 million properties, $5,000 is pennies. But it's scary for people because you can get a Robinhood account and start investing with 50 bucks. And so going from $50 to $5,000, that's really, really intimidating. But it's the same thing. You start out with 50 bucks in the stock market. After a while, after you kind of learn the ropes and you get into it, then it's not so scary investing $1,000, and then it just becomes normal everyday thing. And so I think it's the same thing with real estate. It is scary, it is intimidating. Obviously, do your research, learn what you can, what you need to know. But after a while, you have to just jump in and do it. And in the grand scheme of things, say you lose $5,000, that's your tuition. You know, that's the money that you spent to learn, and you'll make that back on the next deal.
That's awesome. I think yeah, I think you guys are both very knowledgeable on the whole aspect of getting started with real estate, working on it. Especially, I mean, with you, Bryce, like you are still very fresh in it. Like you said, you just kind of hit your 1 year mark um to finally get into the real estate game and start making. I mean, the fact that you went from 0 to 12 doors in a freaking 1 year marker. I mean, obviously you really got pulled in so deep for it because
Can I say one more thing on that? Just hearing Bryce and I's story, something that would have intimidated me if I was just starting off. Bryce going at 12 doors in 1 year and me flipping 130 properties in the last 3 years is not typical. It's we are fortunate to be where we're at and done the numbers we did. And I don't know about Bryce, but mine were not without hiccups. You know, we paid dearly for several properties. You know, we've had to bring money to the table for several properties, and it stings, but we did that because we grew at the speed we grew. So you're never just gonna. It's not gonna always be fun and games. You don't just go flip 130 properties, make $30 million, and everything's happy. I wish that was the case. That's not it. But if you buy one rental property, you're in the top 5%, right? If you're in the top 5% of people, you're in the 5% of people that probably own rentals in the U.S. If you probably have one, I would guess. I don't know the statistics exactly, but I know what they are financially, and I know that like 85% can't afford one. So to be able to afford one and buy one, I bet if you have one or two properties, you're in the 5%. And so just go get your first one, and like anything else, you'll get more comfortable. It'll compound, and if you really love it, it'll compound out of control. If not, maybe you build up 10 over 30 years, and you have a nice cash flow in your retirement on top of all your other investments.
nice. Yeah,
That's awesome.
JJ even said on the in the comments here, he said you definitely have to make the jump. I know he also just recently got into his first property a few months ago, and he was planning educating himself, and then he took the leap and got into it without, like you guys were saying too, it wasn't like smooth sailing. I know he had a couple issues here and there, but he made it through, and now he has a rental property, has it rented out, and making a cash flow for it. I think that's fantastic. uh,
But before we change topic, I don't want to alienate Kelly. I know that Kelly she has a goal to buy her first rental property. So I'm curious to hear what some of Kelly's apprehension is, and I'm sure that you can relate to a lot of people in the chat right now. So what's kind of your main thing from starting you? Is it lack of knowledge? Is it funding? Is it all the above? What?
I think it's all the above. Like we just bought our first house, which was huge for us and, really scary, to be honest. A lot of just things that we never been through. Like, yeah, we got through it. So I know that we would be able to get through our first rental as well. But my biggest thing is, we need to have the cash flow in our budget to pay for that mortgage if it's not rented. I would never want to have just a small enough buffer to do it. And then, you know, like say have, I don't know, 3 months worth of expenses in a fund for it. And then all of a sudden our tenants leave and we can't find new tenants, which I'm sure we'll be able to find, but just know I would want to have enough room in our budget, personal budget, to be able to cover it. because at the end of the day, it is, still in our name and everything.
I think you're discounting yourself a little bit because you know you're smart enough financially to plan for that. Just knowing you for how long I've known you,
Mhm.
I think that you're scared of 4 months of no rental. You bought in a bad area then, and I think you would do the due diligence not to do that because you're not a 4 month no rental. You bought a bad. Correct me if I'm right here, wrong here, Bryce. But you bought the wrong unit in the wrong area, and with all of us in your corner, we're not going to allow that. Like you can always bounce it off us. I'm not saying your fears are unwarranted. I'm just saying that you're
Right.
really smart. So some of your fears are going to be overblown because of how smart you are with money and
Yeah.
doing your due diligence.
Well, and something to say about that too, like, okay, so you made a mistake and you bought a bad rental, sell it. Like,
Yeah.
sell it and just buy something else. Like, people think that they're going to make this huge mistake and they're so far gone, it's going to be so detrimental to their finances that they can never recover from that. And again, like, I realize that ten or $15,000 is a lot of money to a lot of people, but the longer you do real estate, you'll realize $15,000 is nothing. And so, in the grand scheme of things, even if you do fail, which I do not see that happening, I'm right there with you, John. Like, Kelly's an intelligent person and she knows her finances. She's going to do her research. The biggest thing is just taking that jump, like JJ said, and just doing it. Analysis paralysis is a real thing.
I also feel like with Kelly, because like the fact that you guys work so hard, that even if you didn't have somebody in the property for a month or two, that you would make the money work to be able to still pay it, knowing that long term it's going to be a viability for you guys to be able to own it and build up equity, get the renter in there.
I think, yeah, like I think long term, but I think it is, analysis paralysis. And, we also have that's a big goal for us, but we also have other goals that we want to hit. We want to have a baby in the next year, and we also want to take vacations and, enjoy this. If God willing, we do have a baby next year, we want to like we have plans to go to Japan this year. We have plans to go on, 4 or 5 different trips around the US and kind of like just live up this last year with no kids. And so we want to spend money on travel, and that's really important to us. And I'm not saying that you can't travel when you have kids by any means, but like those are things that are really important to Jamie. And right now he's like 60% on board with the rentals and like 99% on board with traveling and spending all of our money there. And then also just, not to make this as an excuse, but cost of living is very expensive down here compared to other parts of the property to the country. Our first rental is probably going to have to be at least $200,000 to buy in a C, BC rated area. So it's not like we can, just find a house for $100,000 and come up with 20% down plus closing costs. It's going to be a much bigger chunk of change.
Yeah, JJ did say,
I told you send your money up here.
By the way, Kelly, JJ did say to live it up before you have kids, all in caps.
See, thank you. JJ has my back.
I think that's an important conversation we just had though, because I feel like in a nice way we teamed up on Kelly to shut down her excuses, but we don't know her whole story. Like she just said it. Like that is a goal, guys, but it comes in third, fourth, or fifth place to the other goals we have, and that's to each their own. There's nothing wrong with anything you just said for you, right? So it works. Now, if you were like, we're going to go on vacations and buy the Tesla and have the baby before we pay off $150,000 in bad debt.
Right.
I would have to hold my breath. I might not comment, but I'd have to at least I'd be struggling over here. But you're just saying we want to do our money situation's fine. We just want to do a couple of these other things before we invest more outside of what we're used to. Who's to say that that's wrong? None of us. We can't say that.
And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but Kelly, I mean, there's no like real rhyme or reason that you have to buy necessarily your property in your area, right? Like you could buy outside in different states as well. Couldn't you guys do that?
Okay, question. That's a good point. But question: how, as a first rental, would that be something that you would suggest? Or really, why?
Well, hold on. Do you want to get into the rental, and do you want the income from it, or do you want to be a rental landlord
I want the
Uh,
money.
so if you just want the money, then you need to be an investor. This is
If,
huge. This is
Well,
huge. Can I have this for just a second? Just a second. Do you mind, Bryce, or do you want to go?
I'm ready to jump, but you go ahead.
I like the spark.
Please make up your
I
set
don't-
mind if you want to be a landlord or an investor. I don't. I like being both. I think Bryce seems to like being both. Who'll answer that? I want to be in the world of real estate. But if you just want to be an investor in the world of real estate, please figure that out first, because you're going to pull your hair out trying to make another 6 to 8% on your money, maybe a lot more. Yes, there's a lot of upside, but you're going to have a ton of time in it too. But if you just want the returns from it, there's a ways to give people like Bryce and I money, and we give you that return, and you just take what, AKA mailbox money. You're not going to make as much, but you're not going to have any of the time tied up. And also, if you buy in other markets, guess how much I bought a house for the other day?
I don't want to know.
$5,000. I bought a house for $5,000 the other day. We're going to put $15,000 into it. We're going to rent it for $650 a month. Do the math on that. Like where you find that return anywhere else in the United States, it's not impossible, but it's hard. And that's not the only $5,000 house we buy. We probably buy a $5,000 house once a month. That's not possible in a lot of areas. But my margins when we flip houses, they're good, but they're not like in California where people make $350,000 a flip. I'm not going to see that. So it's got its pros and cons. It's cheaper to enter the market. But yes, buying in other markets is fine, especially if you're just going to be an investor. You want to be hands-on? Bryce might fight me on this or disagree with me on this, but if you're going to be hands-on, buy next door if you can. Just don't let them know you live next door. But buy next door if you can, because the closer you are to managing these properties, the easier it's going to be for you. And if you buy multiple properties, try to keep them in the same area unless you're going to hire a management company. I'm done.
Okay,
You said you're
I'll
on
put in my
fire.
2 cents and then I'll shut up. But this should go without saying, but a lot of people forget this, especially talking about real estate. An investment is supposed to make you money without you doing the work. Otherwise, it's a job. So if you want to make money from a rental property, investing far away from you is probably one of the best things you can do,
Really?
because that means that you're not physically going to be there when something breaks. You don't have to deal with tenant turnover. You're going to have a property manager that's doing 100% of that for you. The reason that's great is because, just like as John said, it's mailbox money. When you hire a team to do everything for you, you get a return and you do zero. And that is the most important thing about an investment. Do you want a job or do you want an investment?
And your anxiety will go down, because if it's right next door and you're just supposed to be the investor, guess what you're going to still do, Kelly? You're going to go drive by it. Even if you have a team on it, you're not going to trust them. You're going to go check on it. If it's in Missouri, are you going to go drive by it?
Nope.
So you're just going to like, where's my money? You either gave your money to a good management company or you didn't, or a good money management company or you didn't, investment agency. But you should either be getting mailbox money or something's wrong. And if something's wrong, you're just sending an email. Where's my money? That's all you're doing. That's really all you're doing.
Show me the money.
To give you perspective, like I said, we've got 3 house flips going right now. I hire a contractor and I do zero work, not a single thing. I buy a house because I know the value that it can be worth when it's fixed up, but I'm not in there swinging a hammer. I say, I know this house is going to sell for 160 when I'm done. I bought it for 80. It's going to take 25,000 to work. Done. My contractor comes in. He does all the subs. He does everything. I give him the money and he says, okay, Bryce, your house is done. I call my realtor. She throws it up on the MLS, sells it, done. Like, I'm not in there doing anything. You can if you want. I mean, some people legitimately just love
We would
that.
probably want to.
Like, I'm an IT guy, so I
We're
sit at a
picked up
computer
people.
all day long. And so at the end of the day, the last thing I want to do is sit in front of a computer, which is funny because I do YouTube. But really, truly, like, I like to go in there and paint and do things like that. So I do what I like to do, and I hire out everything that I don't. And so if you don't want anything to do with it, but you just want a different asset class, hire it out 100%.
There's 2 ways to look at that. So Bryce, you know that you lose probably $15,000 a house because you sub it out, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're fine with that because you don't do any of the work.
Oh, yeah, I don't
But
care. I feel like
if you're hands-on, you can make much more money per flip. Like, so we can wholesale a lot of our properties because we sub everything out as well. My partner project manages the whole thing, but we sub all the work out. But we can make another $10, $15, $20,000 per flip. But now we can't do as many properties because we're hands-on in that one. So if we can do 10, we make up for that loss by
Mm.
doing more properties. But there's nothing wrong. Like some people enjoy doing the work. They enjoy doing the flip. I have a friend here that him and his dad flip together, and they probably make about 20% more per flip than we do because they can do the work for 80% less than what we pay for it because they're hands on with it. But they can only manage 3 or 4 houses at a time where we do 30. And that's just teach their own. It's no right or wrong thing about it.
Yeah, 100%. So on most of our flips, we're on track to net about 25 per house, but you're 100% right. Like, could I make 35 or 37 if I did all the labor my work or myself? Yeah, of course I could, but I have a 9 to 5 job and I don't want to deal with it. And so paying the extra $12,000 to have someone else manage it and sub it out, I'm fine with that. I don't care.
Well, guys, I got a baby in the like that door right there. Y'all know I live in a small apartment. I have a door right there, and yes, I rent, even though I'm an investor. That's for another whole thing. But I have a door right there. The baby's right there, is making noise, and I need to let her go to sleep. But thank you guys for so much for having me on. And hello, everybody on YouTube that doesn't know me. Appreciate your time tonight, and thanks, guys.
Thanks for
Yeah,
being
thanks,
here,
man.
John. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think JJ needs to get back on or get on
Yeah.
at this point. He should be done.
JJ, come take my spot because I don't even know how to leave.
I wonder if I can kick you out.
That's rude. That's rude.
I can remove you. Goodbye.
Can you? Can you?
Yeah, bye.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, that's hysterical.
All
Yeah,
right,
so JJ should totally get onto the call. So
we definitely got a couple of questions that are backed up. Sorry, John and I get on tangents. Like I said, we always dominate the conversation. With
yeah,
this.
I saw. So Metal Slug had a question. It will take away from this conversation, and there was one other question I think someone had that was. Anything, we can at least go back and answer Metal Slug. So hopefully, Metal Slug, you are still here in the room, so we can finally get to your question. So it said, "Hey Bryce, I'm 17 and have lots of money ready to invest, which is awesome at 17. I started working on my hosting company. Awesome. Nice. So clearly they saw your stuff and says, I want to start to build my credit as soon as possible when I turn 18. What are some ideas I can now Perfect. For passive income?
So, oh, awesome. Metal Slug is still here, I think. So
nice. Yeah.
So just like Dennis said, congrats. Like if you got a nice nest egg set up, that's way more than I had when I was 17. So congratulations. That's awesome. If people are interested about what he's talking about with the hosting company, just super quick, I rent a server and then I put a bunch of websites on it and rent the websites on top of that. So if you're interested in that, there's a video on that, how you can make some money renting out a server to other people. Okay, now to your question. You want to build credit as soon as possible when you turn 18. What are some ideas I can do? The biggest thing that I would say is get a credit card. Get a credit card as soon as possible. Most of you, if you're interested in personal finance, I'm sure you're aware of Graham Stephan. His videos are all over the place. He talks about all the time his biggest regret is not getting a credit card the day he turned 18. I think he was 20 or 21 when he got his first credit card. And now he uses them liberally, like I think everybody should. The biggest thing you have to be aware of is, can you use it responsibly? I'm guessing you can if you're able to save that much money. But get a credit card, put every single expense that you have on that credit card so you get points, and then pay off the credit card in full every single month. And just by living your life and your daily transactions or weekly transactions, whatever they are, your credit score will just automatically go up without fail.
Yeah, there's
sorry, go ahead.
No. To kind of go off on that, because you said pay your credit card off every month. In case you ever hear anybody say that that's not a good idea, you need to have credit roll over for it to count. It doesn't matter. You can have it fully paid off since day one, and you will still increase credit score. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that because I've had people in the past tell me that like, oh, I had to have my balance roll over and get charged on interest for it to count towards my credit score.
Not the case at all. The last thing I'll say regarding that is make sure that your credit utilization. So let's say you get a credit card and you have $3,000 is your credit limit. Don't ever go over 1/3 of your credit utilization. So maximum, only carry a balance of $1,000 max. Again, like Dennis said, you don't have to carry that balance over. If you can, which you should, pay it off 100%, but maximum, don't go over 1/3 because that will ding your credit.
Yeah, the 30. Sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
I was going to say, shameless plug. I have a credit video coming out on Monday. on how to increase your credit score. So stay
Aimless.
tuned for that.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, so a lot of people don't know this, is that credit scores are determined by a couple different factors. So you have like your credit history, your credit utilization, which is what Bryce was talking about, which is how much of your credit score is available and how much of it you're using. So if you're using 30% or less, you're going to be in a really good place. Anything above that, it will hurt your credit score. There's also age of your credit, which unfortunately, being so young, it's going to be a deterrent, but getting started is more important than anything. And then how much overall credit you have available in your possession, which is really good. Getting started at 18, you can only do so much, but over time, if you can either increase your credit limit on that card or have multiple different versions or multiple different cards with quite a bit of credit available without necessarily using them, that is also going to look really different types of accounts too. This is a little bit difficult at 18, I would say, but if you have certain types of loans out, that will also look
Perfect. Dennis, we're sitting right at under a minute. Should we pop out and back in real
yeah.
quick?
So we're gonna take another just like 1 minute break, and then we're gonna do probably one more round here tonight. So second.
Again, don't leave. Don't go anywhere. We'll be
Yeah.
right back.
But you guys can ask more questions. All right, guys. So we are now back. Hopefully everything is looking good for you guys here. So we were talking about credit scores or getting a credit card, increasing our just credit in general. So I guess a good question would be like, and I know the answer, but Bryce, since this is your channel and everything, why is that important? Like, why should you care about a credit score at all?
So I am a very open. I shouldn't say hater. Hater is a strong word, but I strongly disagree with Dave Ramsey. Cannot stand the guy just because I have a very different mentality. If you're watching earlier on the live stream, I mentioned how I bought 12 rentals in the last 12 months. That would not be possible if I didn't have a good credit score. And credit really is the key to having leverage. Without that credit score, I couldn't walk into a bank, show that I have a good credit score, I have good financials, I have TruFinancials. I couldn't show
Yeah.
I couldn't show that I had sound responsibility with my finances. So having a good credit score, having a long history of good credit score is crucial if you're going to get into real estate or really just anything too. Like Dave Ramsey always talks about how you can rent a car using a debit card. He's probably right. I'm sure you can. It's 1,000 times easier to do it with credit. So be smart with it, be responsible, and it really will open doors for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think what most people don't realize is that if they're sitting there saying, "Oh, well, credit score, it's a I love debt score." Well, if you really think about it, is if you go to a bank and ask them for $200,000, in what mind do you think they should give you money with no history of how you can manage your money? Now, granted, if you're somehow saving up, 20, 30, $40,000 to be able to put down on a house, that's great, but like your history of being able to manage debt can determine that. And most people don't realize this too, is that the worse off your credit score is, the more interest you're going to be paying, which means you're going to be losing more money in the long term. So if you are able to manage your debt, which we talked about, not being stupid with it. We're not talking about going out and buying steak dinners every night with your credit card. We talk about being very reasonable and, paying attention to your debts, paying it all off right away. And then you can have a higher credit score, so you can have a lower interest, which means one, you're going to have more cash flow for your investments. And then you just don't have to deal with having to pay all this crazy amount. Because, I did it with cars. If you have certain credit score, you're going to pay that higher fee if it's really low, and then versus if you have a great credit score, you're going to pay very low interest, and the difference in cost can be thousands of dollars. And then houses, that's even more. It could be even $100,000 difference. You have like a 3 to 4% difference from the low credit scores to the high credit score.
Right.
We need the little heart icon.
Yeah.
So for me, my like foundation is Dave Ramsey. Like that's who I got out of debt with. He's the one that taught me about money. He's the one that taught me pretty much everything that I knew in the beginning. And then as I became debt free, as I started, expanding my financial knowledge and doing more research on different things like fire and whatnot, I started branching out a little bit more. And I was shocked at how much our credit score affects our mortgage and that whole home buying process, because our credit when we bought the house, it wasn't great. We had the only debt we have is credit cards besides our mortgage now. So, we don't have the different types of credit. So because of that, our credit wasn't the best. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't excellent or super, super high. And so we ended up having to buy down the mortgage with points to get a better interest rate. And I was talking to my mortgage broker about it, and I was shocked at how important they put on the credit score, but not your net worth. And I was like, I have a net worth of this. I have this in the bank. Why does the credit score matter that much for my interest rate? And I was shocked at how much value they truly pay on it. And I understand kind of why they do, but then, I'm not 100% out of the debt score. I still somewhat believe that saying, especially since we personally don't carry debt other than credit, or we don't carry, we have credit cards. We don't have anything. We don't pay interest or anything on them. And then we only believe in mortgages, but we pay cash for cars and everything like that. So I don't know. I still really struggle with credit scores in that way.
Well,
And Kelly, I hope you don't feel like I'm hating on you and anybody in the
No.
stream. I hope that nobody feels that
No.
way. But I think that's what's so great about having a live stream like this is personal finance is personal. It is very individual to every single person. And so it's interesting to hear my perspective versus Dennis's versus John's versus Kelly's. So from this, take what really resonates with you and pull it out and apply it to your own life. And even if you get 5% better, great. That's the goal of why we do YouTube.
Yeah, so the funny thing that you mentioned that is, so there's and this is not just going on Dave Ramsey, this is just like for people who are big fans of like Clark Howard, Susie Orman, or like Sam or anybody else out there in the personal finance. Like even for myself or you or Kelly, like I think if somebody tries to mimic any one personal finance coach or YouTuber or anybody, I think it's going to make it very difficult because your life is so different than theirs. But I think if you take small nuggets from every person and kind of build up your own style of personal finance, I think that can work really, really well. And then always being willing to have your mind opened up to the possibility of something that you believed in at one point that can be different for you. Like credit scores for me at a small point were being looked at as like, it's bad for me. Like, why do I care about my credit score? I got a credit card when I was 18, but I think around my 20 to 21, I tried not to care about credit cards or my credit score at all. But that was obviously a mistake, and I definitely ramified that quickly. But I was okay with the idea of saying, oh, you know what? I was wrong in my early years to think that I shouldn't care about my credit. Kind of like Graham said, and he talked about too. And it's like, it's hard to admit that you're wrong about stuff. Not saying that somebody else is right, but like for my own personal growth and what I want to achieve financially, I was wrong to think that portion was the right way for me, and I'm okay to shift it. And I think if I didn't have the wherewithal to say, you know what, I'm gonna keep on learning and growing, I probably wouldn't be where I am today financially.
If I look back my older videos from when I first started my channel, there's definitely some videos that I don't have the same thought process on. Like debt consolidation. I thought it was 100% no way. You're just trying to take the easy way out. And I don't think that now. Like I've definitely grown and changed my thought process on a lot of things throughout the years.
Definitely. So I wanted to go back to James. I don't know if James is still here in the chat. Hopefully they are. They had a
James, if
fantastic
you are
question.
here, be sure to chat or say you're still here.
Yeah, James, if you're still here, let us know. They had a great question. They said, "Hey, I am 16 and interested in flipping properties when I'm out of school. Where should I start?" Again, I think just like Metal Slug, I think that is fantastic to have that type of question for such a young person to want to get into something like that.
So that's again, I agree. Really good question. The biggest thing that I would say is find a mentor. And it's funny because I have a video on that coming out in 5 days, whenever that is.
Oh, shameless plug.
I know. So watch for that one, because I really do talk about how to find a mentor. And it's huge because I would not be where I'm at today right now without finding a mentor. If you don't have anything to offer, like if you don't have any money or you don't have any experience, nothing else, like go and volunteer your time. Say, I just want to shadow you. I just want to watch you. That is the number one way to start. Again, I would not be where I am today if I didn't have somebody already doing what I wanted to do.
I mentioned earlier that a lot of the people in my talking about, but all the people behind me, like you, John, my parents, and my friend Dustin, all of you guys are very like forthcoming when it comes to information and wanting to help out. So I think, like you're saying, find a mentor. Don't be surprised if you want to talk to like less than two people, and both of them are going to end up being the ones that want to help you out, because one, you're so young. I think that's going to be really interesting for them to want to help you out in that way. But then two, everybody that I've ever talked to that loves real estate wants to keep talking more real estate.
That's so true. I know my my aunt and uncle, they just bought a duplex, and it's funny because they'll call me up and they'll say, "Hey, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry to bug you with questions and all this kind of stuff." And I just laugh and say, "Look, I talk to people on the internet about this all day long. Like I don't have to be paid anything. I love this. Like fire away." So yeah, again, definitely don't be afraid to ask questions. Let's see. I know we missed a couple other questions.
Yeah, Mrs. S, while you're looking for those, Mrs. S says, "Dave is great if you don't know anything about money and need a starting point." I agree. Like, it could definitely be a great starting point. I just think sometimes people then find it as like that's the one and all, like all is said and all is done with that. Where I think for most people, if that's your starting point, fantastic. And I think being able to move past that and learn more is like I said, even for myself, I was a Dave Ramsey follower for a while, and then I kind of grew out of it and learned more because I wanted to keep it.
I'll still say this, and I believe that no matter what, Dave Ramsey has done more for personal finance for people across the world than myself, Dennis, and Kelly ever will combined.
Yeah.
Not to play us down, but he just has such a huge effect, and he has changed so many lives. So just like Dennis said, if you know nothing, Dave is like the man. He is the place to start. But my personal opinion is once you get past like baby step 3, start looking somewhere else for your investing advice.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely brought personal finance into the limelight, because I mean, even to this day, talking about money is a little bit taboo still, which is why I love doing these live streams and talking to people, because we have other people around the world and around the country that are wanting to talk about personal finance, but they can't find people around them that are okay with talking about it without it feeling like it's a sore subject in some fashion. So I don't know. For me, I love that he brought it to the limelight, and I think there's still so much more opportunity. And I think there's going to be some big people in like the personal finance niche that are going to come out and are going to be really making personal finance viable in conversation pieces across the board, whether it's in families, friendships, communities, work, and all that stuff, which I think is going to be a positive thing for most.
Yeah. I have wondered too if Dave has just almost like built himself into a corner. Like he can't change his mentality anymore because that's what his brand is about. Like being so stubborn is like cut up your credit cards and better than I deserve. And like that is his brand. And if he were to deviate from that, I think he would lose a lot of people because
for sure.
So even if he doesn't necessarily, just Kelly, like you said, like your mentality over time has shifted. So even if Dave doesn't 100% agree with that, he can't change.
And his personalities.
Yeah.
Like, and Rachel Cruz and Chris Hogan and Anthony O'Neill, like all of those people, they have to stay on brand.
Exactly.
It could be tough.
which is why you need to listen to YouTubers like us, because
And
obviously
I think it's good to mix and match. You know, like Bryce said earlier, pull some from this person, pull some, and kind of figure out what is best for you and what motivates you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like for me personally, I love investing in the market because that's like the stock market because that's what I know best. But that doesn't mean that's all I'm gonna ever do. But that's where my like bread and butter is as far as knowledge goes. So that's where I focus in the most. But I'm learning small pieces from like you, Bryce, from John, and from all these other people about real estate because I feel like as good as it is to be great at one thing or good at one thing, I always want to keep getting better and keep learning as well too. I don't get all my real estate information.
Yeah. Okay, there. I know we missed a couple other questions, and there was one from Mrs. S. Again, sorry, going back to real estate. I feel like I'm still dominating conversation. Mrs. S says, "Do you manage your properties or have a property manager?" We self-manage everything, and I don't plan for it to always be that way. But right now, we're in the growth phase, and like I said, we're planning on hopefully doubling what we did this first year. And the reason why we self-manage is because we're not giving away 10% of our rents to somebody else. And so keeping that money, we're able to scale up even faster. Now, having said that, though, um, I think there's a lot of things that are beneficial from managing everything yourself. You learn kind of the trade, and it really is not as bad as everybody makes it sound. There are ways to automate your business so it's not that big of a deal. For example, I got a call the other day that a furnace was out. I called my HVAC guy. He went over, fixed it, and sent me a bill. I had another issue where I needed to call a plumber. So I called a plumber. They went over, fixed it, sent me a bill. Like really, truly, maybe took me 15 minutes being on the phone tops. And 90% of the calls that I get, I can call a handyman or somebody else. So self-managing is not that big of a deal. Let's see. Brad Finn, the Finn Mindset, he had a question on my thoughts on turnkey real estate investing. If you're not sure what turnkey real estate investing is, it's essentially you buy a property from a company that has already been fixed up, is in perfect condition. Oftentimes they already have a tenant in place. You buy the property and you're ready to go. There's nothing else that you have to do. Personally, I disagree with turnkey rental property, mostly because there's a tax associated with it, not like an actual tax, but you're paying a premium for this property because somebody else has already done the work. I think you should definitely get your hands dirty first and figure out kind of the ropes and how to do it, because you really are paying a premium. You're paying an extra 10 or 20% to other people, and really you're only going to walk away with 6 to 8%, which in the end, why not just invest in the stock market to make those returns anyway? My personal opinion. Do we miss any others, Dennis?
Not that I know of. I think that was question. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, they're welcome to go ahead and leave them in the comments as well too. Like I said, I think people have been asking some fantastic questions here all night so far. Especially we had a couple young people too, which is
right,
really cool. But I see Ryan put a question in here. Does real estate has made more millionaires than anything else? Question mark.
yes.
Yeah, definitely. That I know that to be true as well.
Yeah. I can't remember what the exact percentage is, but I think 85 to 90% of the world's richest people did it through real estate.
Yeah. I think you can name more people who are wealthy based off of real estate than they are through investing, because the most popular investor is Warren Buffett, and that's really it.
Absolutely.
So Hugh asked a question, says, I don't know if you've answered this yet, but is your wife a financial nerd like you? And I'm assuming that's
I assume so. My wife is the opposite of a finance nerd. One of the biggest reasons that I started YouTube was so that I could talk to somebody else rather than her, because she was going nuts. I'm a huge numbers nerd. Like I love talking about numbers and doing the math in my head. And I think it was starting to drive her crazy. And so my outlet is definitely YouTube.
I can attest to that. So Ryan did ask, what about Tesla? So TSLA, that's Tesla. I can speak about this because I love the stock market. And I do a lot of investing in there. So obviously, if anyone's familiar, Tesla has been having this really amazing rally over the last couple of months, where their stock has over doubled at this point, since I think like September, and as low as $185 in, it was July, and now they're sitting well over like 550 plus. And it's funny because, like, one, that's really great for anybody who's been an investor like myself. I only have a small portion into it, like super tiny, but there's other people that might have had like a couple shares or a couple $1,000s invested. So their money they just literally saw their money double, but it only is a gain if you sell, right? And I know for some people that gets them afraid to want to either get started with investing into Tesla, if they believe in the company, or, if they should sell it. My personal belief is that I believe in Tesla as a company in whole, where they're going to go into the future and what they're trying to build. And so for me, I am still investing in the company in general, even though the stock is going obviously really crazy. But because I do it in fractional shares, the dollar cost average is really, really low. But I do understand some people's perspective on selling the stock, so I'm never against the idea of that. But for me, I just believe in the company and that it's going to be worth so much more in the future that it doesn't matter when I'm buying in. Because I am a believer in when the stock market is that it's better to just be in the market rather than time the market. I don't know if I need it. I know, Bryce, you don't do as much with the market, right?
Not as much. I mean, I do have a stock portfolio, but I personally, I think Tesla's overinflated, and I think it's a bubble that's waiting to pop. But
I mean,
I really,
it does that. It does that pretty rapidly, where it goes up and down.
I feel like there's a lot of these stocks lately that I don't understand where they're getting their valuations from. Like Uber too, like their IPO was a huge flop. I don't know. I just don't know where they're getting these valuations.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Amazon, I mean, their stock is like crazy, and they don't turn that much of a profit. Pretty incredible. But I mean, I just, like I said, for me with Tesla, I just believe in the company and where the future they're trying to take, and so I just believe, yeah, they're gonna go up and down and whatnot. But for me, I'm fine investing in a company I believe in. If you don't believe in Tesla or you don't know a lot about them, I would stay away from it 100%. Like, I wouldn't even get near it. I think people make that mistake too often, where they buy into something like Bitcoin. When Bitcoin was having that huge surge, you'd hear the articles about people selling houses or getting a mortgage on their house just so they can invest in it. Like, you need to know what you're investing in and have belief in it, because if you don't, like, people lose their money so quickly.
True. Arthur Dia asks, question for the investing experts. My mom is telling me that my father, who passed away, has CDs that have matured, and she will need to start taking minimum withdrawals on his 401k. I don't see that as a problem personally. It sounds like your mom is 69 years old. That's what a 401k is for. I mean, you've set all this money aside, you've set CDs aside. I don't think she needs to put the money anywhere and shouldn't be investing it. I mean, that's why we save all that money, to sustain you through the latter half of your life.
Yeah.
Am I crazy here?
No, you're right. I mean, so there is a little bit of what you can do. So obviously, based off of the laws and everything, you are required to withdraw a certain amount every single year. So sometimes that might be more than enough than what she needs, which is fantastic. If she's having to withdraw more than she actually needs, I think that's fantastic. What she can do is, at the worst case, put it in a high yield savings account for the money she's not using, to at least keep up with somewhat of inflation. Because if she keeps it in a bank account that's earning her 0.01% interest, her money is going to become less valuable over time, especially if she doesn't need it right away. And that's the most simple thing you can do. But I mean, if she's like active and wants to do stuff, I mean, she could ideally, if it's enough money, maybe get into like real estate or doing other types of investments, especially if it's not something that she absolutely needs in any near future.
Working.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's my thing, is like, yeah, put it on high yield savings, let it sit there if she doesn't want to do anything with it. But if she wants to, she can start investing in other, but not
Kelly,
a CD.
you're quiet over there. What are your thoughts?
I was just gonna say high yield savings as well. That's my thing. I see that she has his pension and social security, and she's still a full-time teacher. But she could potentially need it for medical problems. Yeah, I would save it as an emergency fund, for the future or whatever. Or I don't know where she lives, but for trips to Florida to come visit you or whatever it may be.
Oh,
Right, really? I think now is the time to spend it. And then really, if she has some that she doesn't need, I mean, open a fund, open a scholarship fund, or donate to charity. I think that's awesome.
So this actually brings up a good point too, because I did see the whole thing about potential medical needs in the future. If she has insurance, like health insurance, and it's a high deductible, she can open up an HSA and take that money and put it into an HSA, so that way she could spend it tax free at that point too. Because if she puts it into HSA, she can deduct that from her taxes.
Very good.
Income tax.
And shout out to Arthur D at Melly. She's one of my OG subscribers. She's a Florida girl with me, and she's a physician, so it's so fun to talk
Oh, very cool.
around that stuff.
Very cool.
So Stalin says, Bryce, wouldn't she be able to invest into 70-30 bonds, stocks, play safely while beating inflation? Not at that stage, personally. I mean, unless she has a lot of play money, sure, but anything, even bonds at that point, I wouldn't risk it. I'd just put it in a high yield savings if she doesn't need it.
I would too. I mean, technically she could. I mean, bonds are a pretty safe investment, but I still am kind of a fan of just saying, like, if she doesn't need it, throw it in a high yield savings account or something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I would look into the HSA. I think Lively is a really good option for HSAs if she can put it in there.
Dennis, I think this is a question for you. Alphonsus asked about index funds.
What was the question?
Hey guys, does anybody have any experience or knowledge with index funds? Are they worth it?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of index funds. For anybody that doesn't know, I mean, it just essentially copies the S&P 500, which is the top 500 companies in the US. And there's a couple different companies that offer index funds. My favorite one is with Vanguard. The one that I personally use is ticker number VOO. And there's a couple other ones out there, but that one has a really low expense ratio, which is good because that means you're not paying as much in fees. It's probably some of the lowest in the industry. And it follows the market, which is nice because I tell people this all the time if they're getting into investing, is that if you have something that is literally following the market and your stocks are going down, like the value's going down, but the stock market's going down, you're in good hands. That just means it's kind of following along with how everything's. So when the market is going up, your funds are going to be going up as well too, and you don't have to do a lot of work. It's very diversified in the different sectors that are inside of that index. So for me, I always tell for a lot of investors, index funds are a fantastic way to get started, especially if you don't understand a lot of the research that is needed to go into individual stock purchase.
Q's asking me about taxes for Florida. We don't have state income tax, which is amazing here. I'm from Massachusetts. I used to have to pay that. My coworkers were making fun of me. I started taking public transportation today and taking the train to work because my commute's 36 miles each way. And I realized that the train has a discount, and then we also through work have can use it as pre-tax dollars as well, and it's almost like an FSA account. So it was funny, they were making fun of me with figuring out like all the math on everything that I can save with my taxes and going into the next tax bracket and this and that, and going down to how much pennies I'm going to save on gas and then my car insurance and everything. But the biggest one for us is just no state tax.
Although, I mean, you also put less wear and tear on your car, so you can use it for
sure,
more fun things without having to, put so many miles on it just for your regular 9-to-5 job.
And then Melly said our state gets most of its revenue from property taxes. Yes, property taxes are very high here, which is actually not that high percentage wise, but a lot of homes here are very expensive, like beachfront, like Mar-a-Lago and West Palm. Yeah.
So speaking of taxes, it was funny. I was talking to somebody else and they were talking about how it'd be nice. Like I agreed with them. I was like, it'd be really nice if we really focused more as a country on consuming, like consumption tax versus like the taxes that we have now. Cause I would do very well since I don't buy a lot of stuff. So that way people have to get charged for like buying unnecessary things. Obviously not things that we absolutely need, like food and, clothing for the most part, but like other things that we buy like TVs and phones and all that stuff. If those had higher taxes to lower the burden on the income tax, that would be fantastic. Now, Bryce, so because we were talking earlier about somebody that's like really young getting started and stuff like that. I'm assuming for most places you're gonna have to be, past the age of 18 to really get into like real estate investing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, legally, unfortunately, and I don't know about other countries, but I believe that legally you have to be an adult before you can qualify for a mortgage or anything like that. But it's kind of interesting because even at the age of 18, I had a good credit score. I didn't have the money to be able to anyway. But even if I did have the money and the credit score, I wouldn't have been able to invest in real estate because I didn't have the history. I had to actually buy a car first before the bank would trust me with anything larger than that to be able to invest. So there is sadly kind of like a stepping stone pattern that you have to go through before you get there. And I know it's tempting when you're 18, you just want to like explode and burst and get busy. But I'm actually not a huge proponent of getting started necessarily when you're 18, because my personal opinion is that you shouldn't invest any money that you can't afford to leave there for 10 years or longer. If you need money within 3 years, you shouldn't be investing it. When you're 18, you've got college tuition potentially, or maybe a trade school, or maybe you need a car, or all these different things. You shouldn't start investing until your funds, your budget, your debt is under control, and you have an excess of money that you can actually put towards investing and letting it sit there long term.
Q makes it happen in the comments is saying about Illinois and their crazy taxes. I'm actually from Illinois as well, in Chicago, and I got so much family there, and they complain nonstop about their taxes and all that. I'm like, I'm fine where I am, so no problems for me. But yeah, Chicago has crazy stuff when it comes to taxes.
Chris Perret is a good buddy of mine, and he's helping me out with watch time. But it sounds like he's moving to Florida for no state income tax.
I don't know if I'd move to Florida just for that.
Florida's overrated.
There's plenty of other reasons. Oh, can I just say something? So speaking of Florida, now this is legit, but have you heard of iguanas freezing and then coming back to life?
No.
It is a thing. It happened today, a ton all over South Florida, because we got into the 50s. So I don't know why they're freezing at 50 degrees, but they go up in trees and then they freeze and they fall out of the trees. And then when the sun warms them up, then they come back to life. It's like almost like a hibernation type of thing. It's legit. I posted it on my Facebook page, a story of a video of one doing it. And iguanas falling out of trees has killed more people than sharks have in Florida.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding. It is. I've seen them like come back to life. It is legit. It's crazy.
Wow. I did not know that was a thing.
So crazy.
Yep.
That's funny.
So I know with our timer here, we only have a few more minutes, so we can kind of start wrapping stuff up. So if anybody has any last questions, we can go ahead and answer those ones there for you guys, for sure. I was excited to talk about some real estate stuff today. I think that was awesome. I think, Bryce, you gave so much greater insight on real estate, because I've been hearing about it for a while now. So it's like constantly hearing some of the same stuff over and over again is really good, because it helps me remember a lot of the important things to know when it comes to getting started.
Right. It's tempting because you get excited, you hear all about it, and then day-to-day life you get busy and kind of forget about it. But the reminder to keep going and keep growing is always
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, because I know like you and I have talked about that stuff where it's this whole idea of like I want to start making my money work for me, and like you were even saying like 5,000 is not a lot, and my goal is to try to save up around like 10,000 before even getting started. Because even that I mentioned, it was like it's not a lot either, but it's like slowly building up and getting that money set aside, and it's interesting to be able to like start putting all this money away, and then hopefully one day when I'm sitting there trying to buy more properties, and $20,000 is just barely getting me into the door and stuff like that too.
Right.
Chris goes, if I die from from falling frozen iguanas, I'm gonna create another reason for my death, please. That's amazing.
No, that's what we're gonna tell everybody. It's gonna make headline.
Guys, it's legit. Look it up tonight. There's videos of them like laying on their back, and then the sun will warm them up, and then all of a sudden you see them like.
Well, they're cold-blooded anyways, aren't they?
Huh?
Aren't iguanas cold-blooded?
Yes.
Well, that's probably why they're able to survive being frozen, because they're probably insides are still fine.
Chris, my friend Chris is just as funny in real life as he is on chat. So
that's amazing.
That's funny.
So yeah, this was a lot of fun. I mean, I always love talking about just money in general, because that's what I do. And like, you know, you said, Bryce, you know, your wife got sick and tired of hearing you talk about it all day, every day. My wife does too. So coming on here, getting to chat with everybody in the chat and with you guys, like we technically talk every Monday, but getting to do this with other people makes it even more fun. It makes it feel like the community is kind of coming together, and people are, you know, just getting to chill and have fun with us. Because what is it? 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock Eastern, like 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock Eastern. So it's like people getting to hang out with us that late.
It's like 2 hours past my bedtime.
Yeah. Kelly, you say that all the time. Like every time we're on a mastermind call, you sit there and you're like, it's past my bedtime.
Other days of the week, I'm in bed by 8:30.
All right, Ryan, we'll definitely catch you later. Thanks for joining us and having some great questions for us to answer. But yeah, I mean, if you want to wrap it up, Bryce, we can end here in just a moment.
If there's any reason to drag it out longer than needed. So just have to say thanks to everyone for being here. Appreciate you being with us. It was definitely fun. Shameless plug, if you guys aren't already subscribed to all of us, definitely do so. There's links down in the description to our different channels, and we'd be eternally grateful if you did that. But no, really super good questions. Really appreciate the participation. And I don't know if or when we plan on doing another live stream, but when we do, definitely stop by.
Yeah, and to kind of help Bryce out too, if you guys are still here in the chat, so Bryce is also trying to get monetized on his YouTube channel to help, you know, invest more into the business for his content. Do him a favor and make sure you start watching more of his videos as much as possible. Like just binge watch them and like leave them in the web browser, so that way he can gain more watch time.
Watch the playlist, because then they just run.
Yeah, right. So that'll help him a lot. So that way he can start really growing his channel. Because you guys probably know this if you watched his content. It's solid. It's really, really good at together. So definitely check it out. I think he's well deserved.
Yeah, appreciate that.
For sure.
Okay, well, thanks guys. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye guys.